Go. Okay, here we go. Pushing the button. It says we're going live. Just a moment here. Oh, it says that we are live on the YouTubes for the, the Westlake Charter School December 2021 board meeting. Hope Golick, our board president, you have the YouTubes.
Thank you. We are meeting tonight pursuant to Government Code Section 54953E1, which authorizes local legislative bodies to hold public meetings via teleconference and to make public meetings accessible telephonically or otherwise electronically to all members of the public. Members of the public are encouraged to observe and participate in this meeting. Further instructions about how to do so are at the bottom of our agenda. You can email comments to admin@wesleycharter.com. You can also join Zoom in order to make a public comment live. However, we ask that you continue to watch on YouTube while the meeting progresses, just because you won't be able to observe the meeting through that link while you are in the waiting room. With that, John, let's go ahead, or Amy, will you go ahead and take the roll?
Sure. Hope?
Here.
John?
Here.
Josh?
Here.
Michelle?
Here.
Janie? Lila?
Here.
Shannon?
Here.
And Jed?
Here.
Perfect. Thank you, Amy. That brings us to celebrations. I'm just going to go in the order that people are on my screen. So that means Josh and then Amy.
Well, thanks, Hope. I'm going to celebrate the holidays. It gives us a little bit of a taste, more of a taste of normalcy and getting back together. And it's always nice to see everybody with a little bit of bounce in their step and a smile on their face.
I know I've celebrated this before, but I'm gonna celebrate the amazing Dr. Ike. He just really always manages to amaze me when he does things that are just so full of kindness and leadership and all the amazing things that he does for us all the time, but especially these days when everybody's just a little bit stressed. He manages to come through and make us laugh and show the caring leadership that we need right now.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks, Amy. Shannon, and then Amber, if you'd like to celebrate.
I'm going to celebrate a little preemptively, but hoping that my partner is in the pipeline to become a substitute teacher at Westlake Charter. So I'm very excited and hoping that happens soon.
I got the application today. It was awesome.
Yay. Amber, and then Lila.
I just want to celebrate our staff for working with me over the last few weeks on Olympic triathlon. Like Amy said, they're
Shannon, and then...
Sorry, team, that was a YouTube echo.
But they're stretched pretty thin right now, but still they worked with me and made it happen. So I appreciate them.
I don't like listening to myself, John, so echoes are scary.
We got an email from one of our viewers who clicked on the link and it took them to the wrong YouTube. I just clicked it and it took her to the right YouTube, so I'm going to email them back and be like, here's the correct link. Sorry about that.
Oh, perfect. And then that way people out there know, too, that if they are having issues, that we are checking email. So feel free to let us know. Lila, and then Michelle.
I am so excited. We are a week out from closing our first semester at the high school, and it is like people are hustling, students, teachers, to close this first semester. And I think the celebration too is just so excited for the second semester, right? These lessons learned as we're, having students start their second semester of high school, and just looking forward to the future. Celebrating where we are right now and looking forward to the future.
Let us know. Thanks, Lila. Michelle, and then Jen.
I want to celebrate Miss Wells and Miss Caillou for, for really being as responsive as they are. When I reach out, I feel like they're always really helpful and quick, and they work really hard and sometimes after hours to get things done. So just wanted to express appreciation.
Thank you.
Jed, and then Sean.
Oh, for the other teachers on the line, you guys will appreciate this. I had a group of ex-students reach out who I hadn't been in contact with for whatever it is, 25 years, almost 25 years. And that group got together, they reached out to teachers, and the teachers are now coming together. So there are all these reunions that are happening, and I'm going to be flying down to LA to see them all. But there's just something so replenishing about coming into contact with people like that. And for all of you folks that wonder, whether or not you want to reach out to a teacher and just express thanks, decades later, I highly, highly encourage you to do it. It's just such a big, big boost to everything you're doing.
I'm not a big Facebook fan necessarily, Jed, but it's been really neat to connect back with my old teachers that way. So I understand that. Thank you for that reminder that it's always good to celebrate those that helped us in our own successes. Sean and then Steve.
Well, I was having trouble thinking. For once, I had multiple things to choose from. So I'm going to choose a different one from what I did in governance. And I am going to celebrate potential field lessons. I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but attended a virtual informational meeting about Sierra Outdoor School. And I'm really looking forward, crossing fingers that it's going to happen and it's going to be as awesome as it was for my last kiddo who went, minus the scorpions. The scorpions were not a big hit.
Thanks, Sean. Steve?
I'd give a shout out to John O'Con, our athletic director, all the coaches are out there, Allison Chavez, and everyone else who's had a finger in bringing athletics and sports to our Explorer students. It's just such a great part of the school, and our athletics teams, particularly over the high school, are just doing such an amazing job. So again, just a shout out to everyone who's had a hand in getting that launched.
My celebration is I'm just going to celebrate this whole team and the school. It's been, I think, a rough trimester, semester, quarter for everybody. And this whole team has come together in a way that makes us very Westlake. And so I just want to celebrate that. Like I think everyone's faced their own trials and tribulations over the last few months. And knowing that I've had this group as I've gone through mine, and that hopefully we've been there for each other and for staff in our community who've needed it. I think that's something this holiday season to reflect on and just to celebrate us being us. And that's no small task. And so it's my shout out to thank everybody for being so present. John, do you want to celebrate one now or wait for your presentation?
Well, I just want to say I'm really excited about Olympic Triathlon tomorrow. It's our first time we're having on-campus parent volunteerism. It's all orchestrated by the amazing Amber Husted. Thank you so much, Mrs. Husted, and the whole WAVE team. But I'm excited. Like, this is, I don't have a big slide that says Olympic Triathlon because it's tomorrow, so I don't have any pictures yet. So I just want to say right now, I'm fired up. Our community is excited about it. It's going to be awesome. So I'll report back.
Thanks, John. Were there any other board comments for matters that are on the agenda? Seeing none, that will take us to public comments. John, do we have any public comments?
I'm looking at the email inbox now. I'm going to hit a little refresh, but no public comments.
Great. Would you mind scrolling the screen? I'm actually working off your agenda tonight, and now I feel like I don't know what's next. Oh, reports. You think I would have known that? Amber, the WAVE report, please.
Hi. So as Dr. Ike and I mentioned, we're very excited about tomorrow. We have, I think, about 20 volunteers coming onto the Mabry campus and then a handful coming onto the high school campus. And we're just excited to see how this goes and to get back together again. And we're coming up with some treats and some swag to kind of welcome this small group back. And we're excited to see how it goes. And I think so far we've raised over $31,000, which is good. Donations are still coming in. I think we've gone up $5,000 today. So it's going up very quickly here towards the end as everybody remembers that it's the last day. And We've been really trying to find new ways for our parents to volunteer and then build community. It's challenging because we're kind of in this middle spot right now. We did put out a survey to our families, and it was very split, like a lot of things are right now, where about half said, I'm done with virtual events. Please don't expect me at any of them. And then the other half said, I might if it works for our family. And then a few people said, I'm not comfortable with anything in person at all. So it's just, we're feeling everybody out and trying to come up with things that are best for our entire community. And then I think our coffee talks this year have been very successful. It's been fun to have options where people were very excited to come in person, and then a lot of people still chose to watch it from their homes. So we've been having both options available, and the third option really of watching it at a later date. So it's worked for everyone's schedules and their comfort. So I'd love to see if we can continue doing things like that, where like our coffee talks are working really well, where we're getting feedback from families saying, this is the first time I've ever been able to see a coffee talk, So it's working well, and I think we're excited about that. So things are going well, and we'll report back about tomorrow, next month. Thank you.
Thanks, Amber. Shannon in the Impact Committee.
Yep. So last month, we looked at the Healthy Kids Survey as a potential survey mechanism that we might want to use. And we kind of ended with more questions than answers, specifically around things about who's our audience, what's the purpose, what do we want to do with some of this data in terms of creating an equity report. So, and also is the timing right? And if we do want to use it, what would the right timing be? So we're going to dig into that a little bit more before next week, come back with some questions and thoughts, and then also put this all into some sort of like timeline and mapping so that we have some milestones and expectations that we can lay out to you all about when we will be bringing tangible results back to the board. So, okay.
Perfect. Thanks, Shannon. Josh in the Development Committee report.
Thank you. So we have our development committee meeting on Monday. Still working towards the high school, but we did kind of a soft rollout for Giving Tuesday of the fundraiser for Museum of Tolerance. We're starting to make headway there. We've been waiting to really roll it out until after the Olympic triathlon is wrapped up, so we don't overlap or cause any confusion. But just a heads up, we are going to be reaching out to all of our board members for help spreading the word of Museum of Tolerance and going through your Rolodex and seeing who you might know that is a business owner, a business leader that would sponsor, 1 student, 10 students, anything like that. So we're not going to be asking the board to sponsor a student, but we are going to be coming to you guys looking for, assistance in just spreading the word and raising the money. And we are still looking for a grant writer. So if anybody knows a grant writer, we are looking for one to help us get this off and running.
Perfect. Thanks, Josh. Sean in Finance.
Okay, so let's see, we did first interim, so we reviewed that, and it's on the agenda for tonight for this board. And then we continuing certificated compensation review and working on the white paper about kind of our process, why we do what we do, when we do it, with regards to certificated comp, so that when the committee turns over eventually, the new people will have some idea of what we've been doing with our time for the past many years.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be able to flesh out the why for that. I think it's going to be really helpful. Governance Committee did meet tonight. We talked about the comprehensive school safety plan, and we plan to bring that back to the board in January or February. And then we're also looking at our corporate documents like the bylaws. We do review those annually at our annual meeting in June. And so it's just putting those pieces into place and discussing any potential changes that are to the benefit of the organization. With that, John, would you like to kick off your executive director's report?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Welcome to December. Let's see what we got. Got some slides here. Clickety click, got a bunch of celebrations, lots of fun stuff happening here. This is the Silicon Schools visit. We had two amazing individuals from the Silicon Schools Fund come out, and I took this picture in Dr. Galloway's classroom. You recognize Dr. Galloway, our 9th grade English 9 teacher on the left-hand side, our two visitors on the right-hand side, and you might squint in and see that neon sign on Dr. Galloway's a wall there. That's something she purchased when she signed up to be part of the school. It says, "We demonstrate what's possible," and that glows in her classroom above our students. I just think that's a great image. We had a wonderful visit with Silicon Schools, and I will report on that one later in the show. This is Wesley Charter School traditions. What's nice is when you're part of a school community for a long time, you see the traditions that have developed. And as we all went away to distance learning, we tried to keep those traditions alive. But now that we're back in this year, you're seeing the traditions, right? Amy, I think this is the young man that you were talking about from first grade, who's talking about family traditions. You can see the gingerbread man has gone missing in kindergarten, and they're all over the place looking for the gingerbread man. It's just wonderful this year to see a lot of our traditions, a lot of the unit studies that we do year after year coming back again. Older siblings talking to their younger siblings and saying, "Oh, did you lose the gingerbread man? We lost the gingerbread man when I was in kindergarten." So it's a lot of fun. I want to celebrate high school basketball. It's up and running right now. Really competitive teams, both girls and boys. The coaches are doing a phenomenal job. The students are doing a great job. They're winning some games. They're showing lots of character and lots of heart. I'm telling you what, this is a great recruitment tool for our high school. These young men and women are really representing our school, representing who we stand for, and playing hard. And anybody who comes to one of these games would say, "Oh, I want to be part of this school." That's a good group of people right there. And we've seen at each home game a lot of 8th grade looky-loos. A lot of 8th graders watching the 9th graders playing and being like, I want to be on that team. So wonderful to have our students playing competitive sports. They're doing a great job. You should all please come out to a game. I'm going to talk about this tonight, but lots of great outreach going on. Lottery's open, and we've got advertisements out there, digital ads, paper ads, lots of good things going on. So you'll see pictures of our students in the community representing our school and recruiting people to come and attend our school. And then just these really cool celebrations that, per the California Ed Code, you're allowed to have 2 non-school food days per year on a high school campus where you can bring in outside food. And so the first day, we had our first food truck day. And who came out? And the Potomac Unified School District brought their food truck out. And actually, they were super competitive. I mean, you would think, oh, everybody wants to go to, the Bad Baker's Donut truck, but the NUSD truck was legit too. So great to see the kids getting access to these food trucks. It really made for a really neat experience. And again, as we market to 8th graders and say, hey, don't you want to go to a school that's got food trucks rolling in and awesome athletics and vending machines? I think it's a really nice opportunity for our kids to say, yeah, I go to school somewhere special. They do special things. Just a picture on Joyful Learning. On the left, in Mrs. Bain's class, using the beautiful outdoor weather and the beautiful outdoor physical flex space over there in 5th grade, doing a really cool math exercise outdoors. Such a wonderful experience. Mrs. Baines is an amazing teacher. Then on the right, that is 3rd grade using B-Bots for Hour of Code. This week is the Hour of Code week. Everybody's coding, doing B-Bots, Ozobots, using code.org, and our kids are super into it and had a great time doing it. Thank you to our entire community for donating to Joey's Food Locker and through the Natomas Chamber for the food drive this year. Both our campuses had overflowing food donations, and we're just proud to be part of it. So thank you, everybody, for letting me celebrate. I'll try and jump in. I got strategic actions and updates for you, and we'll go on with the rest of the meeting. My strategic actions, first of all, a staffing report. As you know, at the beginning of the year, we are fully staffed, ready to go. We've had some people come and go, and I want to make sure we all know where we're at. I've been talking about substitute recruitment every month. Now, we have 5 new subs right now that we recruited. We drew on board that are available 5 days a week. And that is a massive victory for us. We wanted to have at least 6 because we know we have a lot of maternity leaves coming up. So we have 5 new subs. We have 8 subs that are available 3 or less days a week. So bringing these people on board has been fantastic. However, to be clear, there have been 0 days this year where we have not needed a substitute. So a number of days where a sub wasn't needed, 0. Number of days where we didn't have a sub but needed one from August through October. And I tell you this story because August to October, before we did all these substitute recruitments that I'm telling you about, we had 21 days when we're like, ruh-roh, we don't have a, so there goes your principal, there goes a teacher into another teacher's room, there goes 2 teachers splitting the day up. Really a tough launch this year because the substitute pool just dried up. Now we've done all this recruitment that I told you about, and from October through today, we've only had 2 days where we couldn't fill a sub position, so that's really good. So we feel like the recruitment, we have several family members. I mean, I don't know if I should call out names, but like Sherry Cantor is crushing it as a sub. She's an awesome parent volunteer, but we've got some parents who are subbing. But if there's anybody out there still listening, I still need you, and here's why. We have all 8 of our maternity, paternity leaves that are scheduled for this year filled using the sub pool that I'm describing. So that's wonderful. Like we have enough people to cover all 8 of our maternity, paternity leaves. But if you fill all 8 of those with those people up there, we're kind of back where we started, right? So we need to keep filling that sub recruitment tank so that we can keep making it through the year. So you know anybody out there who's interested in substitute teaching, send them down to Westlake Charter School. We are currently, on the certificate and classified position control. All teaching positions as of right now today are fully contracted out through June. So everybody who's in a seat right now has an agreement to be here all the way through June. So we feel really good about that. We did have someone leave this last month, and that position is filled all out till June. So we feel good about that. And then recruitment is already begun for 10th grade teaching positions. Can you believe that? I feel like we just opened the high school 5 minutes ago and we're already looking around the corner and starting to recruit for 10th grade. So that 10th grade bubble is opening up. We have an Innovators Invitational that I'm sure Mrs. Batten will come out and tell us about in next month. But it's very exciting that work has already started. So a little staffing report mid-year there. We did cover the comprehensive school safety plan, or the CSSP, in governance tonight. I just wanted you to know that we produced the team, the CSSP for the governance team tonight. They are acting as our safety team. We've updated the plan to include our high school campus. We have a red line version. It's on file here at Westlake Charter School. The governance team acting as a safety team will have access to it. If any board member wants access to that, we can certainly make that available to you here in the office. And then, of course, once it's passed, it's always here available for anybody if you want to come visit it. We plan to seek approval January or February here at our board on this document, and then we'll forward it to Natoma Unified School District in March, which is our typical timeline each year. And my last strategic action is just outreach. Very excited to talk about lottery tonight. Lottery is open. It is that season, and we're doing a ton of outreach, right? Look at all the beautiful advertisements in N Magazine. Huge shout out to Monica Darris, who works here and does a lot of our graphic design layout. Steve Corvink, that whole team putting these things together. So we're in N Magazine. You can see a couple of our advertisements are really directly targeting high school. One of them is a general, K-12 advertisement, and we love getting our boys and girls athletes on those pictures so that people see, oh yeah, I'd love to send my student to that school. We're also, in there in the Natomas Buzz, we got like a banner up at the top, and then you can see down there on the right, we also have a little advertisement there. It's in their kind of Insta feed. We are sending out postcards. I think they go out. Steve Corving. They go out next week? Did you get one today?
I got mine today.
Oh my gosh, they went out this week. Okay, that's right. Because we were talking this morning about the lottery numbers, and we said, oh my gosh, look at these lottery numbers, and the postcards haven't even landed yet. But they landed today. Oh, let's see the numbers tomorrow. It'll be exciting. So I think the postcards are beautiful. We have 2 rounds of postcards. One obviously targeting directly just the high school and then one targeting the full K, the K10 or K12. Postcards went out. Social media, there's a little Amber Husted reshare up there in the right-hand corner. Thank you, Ms. Husted. But spread the word. So we're putting a lot of effort into social media. We're actually finding, I think, bang for buck, dollar for dollar, postcards versus paid Facebook advertising. Boy, we really get a lot of great analytics out of that paid Facebook where you can just click right there and apply. And then you remember we used to go through the neighborhood and hang flyers in all the business windows, and we stopped that last year during the pandemic. And then we looked at the enrollment numbers and we're like, wow, we had the largest enrollment we've ever had. Maybe we don't need to go out and expose ourselves one more year. So we again did not do posters and flyers this year. Maybe we'll do it next year, but the numbers are certainly holding without those. Before I go into updates, any questions about the things I talked about, staffing, CSSP, or outreach? Anyone have anything? Fantastic. All right, so the updates, this first update just piggybacks on outreach, and it is about, I thought it was me lottery. Just kidding. I put the Silicon Schools one here. Let me give you the Silicon Schools update, and then I'll just keep you in suspense on lottery numbers, which is coming next. It's very exciting. So Silicon Schools, if you recall, the Silicon Schools Fund helps high schools or charter schools launch high schools. They have a portfolio of over 60 high schools in Northern California that they've helped to launch. And we are one of the first schools in the Sacramento region that they came out and actually have funded or helped fund or partnered with. They have offered us $800,000 of partnership over a 4-year period at $200,000 a year. We received $200,000 from them last year. And part of that first year is, okay, we opened. They'd like to come out and see the product, see how we're doing, see if we're adhering to the promises that we made, and just like to, let the air out of the sails here. They were absolutely blown away by what they saw. They gave us great feedback. Brian Greenberg, their CEO, and Rob Schwartz came out on a visit. Those are the two gentlemen in the picture there. And these guys have been in, hundreds of classrooms. They're veteran educators. Rob, they're both previous principals and have both started charter schools. So they really get it. They get what it's like to run a school, to start a school, to be part of a startup organization. And they walked in and they toured classrooms and got an opportunity to kind of feel what classrooms felt like at our school. And in the debrief, they were just incredibly positive, and they recognized a bunch of strengths for us and really kind of like literally said, here's your gold star. That's it. Here's your gold star. Wow, they were blown away. But some of the things they recognized right away was principal leadership. They just said, hey, this Mrs. Batten, grab on with both hands and hold on to this person. This person is running this school incredibly well, and you can just sense the connection that she has with the community. And so just a shout out for Emily Batten for the work that she's doing. And they literally sat us in a debrief and said, so how do we make sure you stay for another 5 years minimum? Because that is what this organization should do to make sure this high school continues on the trajectory that it is. And we talked about strategizing around that. One of the things they really recognized right away was the relationships between students. We have a very collaborative student environment. They walked into classrooms where students were doing book studies, like book clubs. They walked in a math class where kids weren't sitting in straight rows facing forward. They were working together. They recognized the student relationships. They recognized the student-staff relationship that is very the relationships are strong, and they recognize the staff relationship. They really spoke to this, like, you have something going on here that is working now, and you got to be able to scale that and continue to collect the right people who are going to make this work, because this is what's working at this school, is that it's relationship based. They recognize the investment in facilities at a very high level. They came through the Oasis. They said, hey, just pause. Wow. Most people try to, spruce up a facility like this, but you guys kind of went to the next level and really were very intentional about what you're trying to do with this space, create an engaging space for kids, but also something that could act as an indoor-outdoor learning space. And they were just really blown away by that facilities work. They love the student commons, the Explorer Lounge, all the classrooms, really good work there. They recognized that that the learning environments were rigorous and engaging. The students were engaged in learning in a very rigorous high level. Like it wasn't just fluff happening, and it was definitely not a dog and pony show. It was really happening. So I love that piece, and that student work product was recognized as exemplary, and that included the verbalization of the work the students are doing. Students were dialoguing using academic language. Students are producing and showing work on the walls. I mean, the work product at the high school, I wish you all could come walk. It is really rigorous and high level work that they're doing. I'm very proud of the product that our students are producing, and our students as products, as our students showing high school, what's possible in high school. And they were very impressed with enrollment and retention. They said, boy, if you get X percentage of your own 8th graders to come to high school, you'd be pretty lucky. And then we got X plus many. And they were pretty blown away by the recruitment efforts that paid off here. So they acknowledged that Westlake Charter High School is among the most successful launches in their portfolio this year. Of the schools that are 4 months in, they said, hey, nobody's ahead of you. You are ahead of the pack in our portfolio. So keep doing what you're doing. They're very proud. The big area of consideration was sustainability. How do you take all the energy, effort, and investment that you put into the launch of this school? Because guess what? You got to launch again next year and the next year and the next year. So how do we make this system repeat itself again? So anyway, a really great report about Silicon Schools. I loved what they saw, and we appreciate their partnership. And it seems like they will be funding us again this year for the full $200,000. Any questions on that team? Cool. Now I'll talk about lottery. Lottery is open, and here's a lottery update. So opening day back in 2018, on the very first day of the lottery, we had 208 applications, and we ended up with, that was, I think, the first time we broke 1,000. Next year, we went up to 307 on opening day. Then we went up to 481 opening day. That was last year. How can you possibly beat 481? There's no way. Just kidding. 566 people applied to come to Westlake Charter School opening on day one. In one day, 24 hours, 566 people applied to join Westlake Charter School. So that's fantastic. This year versus last year, to date, to December 9th, we had 746 applicants at this time last year. We now have 898. I'm sure by now, because this was this morning, have over 900 applicants, which is phenomenal. I mean, just phenomenal. And this doesn't close, right? You all know, until January 31st. Last year at this time, we were very cognizant of where we are at in 9th grade. Remember, our current 9th graders don't apply. So there's 112 of them who don't put their name in this hat. We have 29 last year and 32 this year, and we've never had any 10th grade applicants, but right now we have 8 of them, which is super cute. And I we're not even sure if there are 8th grade openings. I think we may open 15, depending on what happens by the end of this year. But there we go. There's a little lottery update. Very excited about these numbers. We couldn't be more happy that postcards dropped today, and already we're kind of breaking some records, which is really exciting. Any questions on lottery? No? Cool. Well, you remember a few months back, Mrs. Gibbons, you had asked me to do some achievement gap analysis, and I think I brought it back 1 month, and maybe I kicked it to this month because Michelle, you weren't here. I thought, I'm gonna hold that till Michelle's back. So I'm going to do an achievement gap analysis tonight using some of our previous Casp data. I think I'll focus on the achievement gap between African American or Black students and white students. However, I'll have our other students listed, and I'll show you the different assessment metrics that we have on hand and kind of pitch you on what I think the achievement gap analysis plan is going forward. And I'd also like to take this thought, Shannon, over to Impact as we look at achievement gap dashboard production that we've kind of talked about in Impact. So let's dive in a little bit. I just want to walk you through a little benchmark moment. You see, when we authorized our charter, we used the 2018 Casp data. The next year in 2019, data was pretty flat, it was pretty comparable. And then 2020, Casp disappeared. 21, it came back. We used STAR. So Casp data has not been a great metric for us since authorizing our charter. But I'll go back to this. Remember, in Casp, you have ELA, which includes reading and language and writing all in the Casp. And I don't know if you can see this very well. Those numbers are real small, but I'll blow them up on the next slide. So back in our charter, in Appendix A, what we did was we took our student achievement here and compared it to the student achievement in the state of California, using the state of California as a benchmark. African American students in the state of California scored, 32% of them met or exceeded standards, and white students were, 60%, creating a 33-point achievement gap. We compared our African American students to the white students at the state of California to compare our achievement gap to the achievement gap that existed at the state. So it's kind of a cool triangulation for our charter. Now, there's no way to do that anymore. There's just no state data. So we're going to shift to all internal comparables within our own organization, and that's fine. That's just, I'll give it away, but we're going to shift to NWEA because we have that data. However, these are some benchmarks to begin with. There was a gap in English language arts. Here's a gap in math we'll talk about. But in this year, the California Charter Schools Association data team did a really interesting multiple regression predictive table that told schools how each one of their subgroups performed against the rest of the state. So it's really interesting as we look at our gaps. In 2018, our students had a double-digit achievement gap between our African-American students and white students. And even with that double-digit achievement gap, our African-American students were performing in the 80th percentile for African-American students in the whole state. And I'm going to show that on the next slide. But again, this metric, no longer available. These two metrics, no longer available. But I wanted to show them to you because I think at the time we thought these were really interesting metrics to utilize. So as we go forward, Shannon, kind of looking at impact, how do we come back to these ideas of benchmarking internally, benchmarking externally, and benchmarking subgroups across the state? So let's drill down so we can see it a little better. I'm hoping you can see this one better. This is the 2018 Casp data, and this is an internal comparison. Our Black or African American students versus our white students. And then you could also see for Asian, Hispanic, English learners, and students with disabilities, we have the same data. But I've just highlighted our African American students right here with an 18-point achievement gap between African American and white students in English language arts, a 26-point achievement gap in mathematics. And again, in that year, our students, when compared to other African-American students across the state of California, were performing the 80th percentile. So it's interesting that with these gaps that are internal, we still had an external metric that said, hey, these students were outperforming 80% of the other students, African-American students from around the state. Okay, check. Now, if we want to do this type of analysis and really drill down and see how we're performing, it's gotten a little trickier in the last couple of years because this data, super old. It's 2018, not really what we want to be staring at, but I wanted to benchmark where I think we started the conversation at the charter, and let's jump forward. So we have Casp that hasn't really come back yet. We think it's coming back this spring. In 2021, we used the STAR assessment in lieu of Casp because that's what we were asked to do. But then in this fall, we brought back NWEA, which we probably have the most control over. And I'm gonna say that's probably the one we want to be using for at least the next 36 months because Casp data is going to come back online, I think, slower than maybe originally predicted. So let's take a look, though. Here are the three different metrics. This first one, can you guys see my arrow? You can. Okay, thank you. This is that 2018 English language arts assessment from Casp. Now, we look at that. I already told you it was an 18-point gap between African American students and white students in Casp, and we know that. Then we look over here these two assessments have different numbers, obviously, because they're taken in different years. But what's interesting about this is these two metrics here are only reading. They don't really align to CASP because CASP includes language, grammar, writing, and reading, and these ones don't include those pieces. You're like, they don't really compare anyway. So trying to compare apples to oranges here, I wanted to at least put it on the screen and say, well, let's take a look at it. I mean, there is still a persistent gap, check. What's interesting, I thought, though, was these ones compare a little more closely. I mean, look at the math 26 and 26 from 2018 and 21 and 32% there. What's interesting to me is the math maybe compares better because it's all the same math standards. I think the NWA has a little bit of a fatigue factor in it. That STAR assessment took less than 20 minutes. Whereas the NWA test is 52 questions. And I think what you see is there is some fatigue. So I don't know how well this STAR assessment and this NWA assessment compare. But it does look like, there may be some alignment between the math ones and CASP and NWA. So I kind of tell you that story to tell you this story. I think if we want to continue to do subgroup analysis and really drill down, I think our best point is NWA. We own it. We've got it. Yes, I think the scores at NWA are typically lower than CASP. I think NWA, the map test always appears to be a little more rigorous than CASP because we try to use it to benchmark how we're going to do on CASP, and we always outperform on CASP compared to NWA. And those of you who've been on the board a long time probably recognize I come out and I predict this, and then we always do better on CASP. And STAR threw us for a total loop because it didn't compare well at all. However, we're going to do it 3 times a year. We have the data local. We can drill down really easily. Here's some of your disadvantage on NWEA. We can disaggregate by students with disabilities and English learners, but you can't disaggregate NWA by socioeconomic. Whereas with CASP, you typically get that data. Students, socioeconomically disadvantaged students, here's how they're scored. We can't do that locally because we don't own that data. That data is hidden from the local administration, which is fine. Because if we want to look at identity as it breaks down by race, ethnicity, or by student disability or English learner status, we will have that data through NWEA. And we have our next administration coming up in just another month away. I believe it's end of January. I'm looking at MacGyver. I think it's the end of January we launch NWEA. So if you'd like, as a board, I'd love to have feedback on what you'd like to see coming back around. I think what I would be able to do is come back around and say, okay, using fall NWA as our baseline, let's start tracking forward if this is data that you want to see. I'll take questions, comments, feedback. I wanted to get this conversation started. It's certainly not a one and done. And I'd love to actually, Shannon, take this over to Impact and see what we want to do with our equity dashboard with this work as well. Ms. Gibbons.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ike, for sharing and presenting on this information. It's always the thing that I care about the most, and making sure that we're looking at that achievement gap and closing it in any way possible. And I think it's always great to know what it is so that we can kind of focus on how to get there and monitor progress. There's 2 things that come to mind that I would just ask that you all can, be really mindful of. The first is there's also, I think, standardized tests have shown, at times there's a disparity in the results. And so one thing that would be helpful is to also, if there at some point could be I don't know if you have like a database of all the like grades too, like the 1s, 2s, and 3s. Yeah. But if you almost look at that and track it to what you're seeing there, like if there is a way to not compare the 2, but monitor and see if like our assessments and the way that you allow our children to kind of take those assessments versus the standardized testing, if it yields a different result in terms of the achievement gap. And if you don't have that information, fine. But if there's a way to look at that, I think it would be really interesting. And then my second encouragement would just be, as we know it, let's really create a concrete plan to be able to address it and figure out like, you know, what additional resources can we give to the students? What, you know, how can we break those issues down? And I would also encourage us to think about things that are not just like the actual academic support, but it also could be more social emotional supports as well. So, and thank you, because this is like a passion area of mine, and I really appreciate you bringing this back.
Yeah, and I love the conversation. So thank you. I couple thoughts, and Shannon, I guess I keep speaking to you because we're going to be an impact, but I think we could try to pull some out of Illuminates and Otis some grade analysis, the 1s, 2s, and 3s. We could just create a benchmark and say, hey, anybody at 2 or above, and we would track the 1s, and we would probably report out on that, and maybe make some comparative analysis. I think that would be interesting and doable on kind of a systems level. We could rinse and repeat. We don't want it so cumbersome that but like if you could just keep producing this data and throwing it up on the dashboard, I think that's really interesting. I loved what you said about resources. So one of the things maybe I'll have Mrs. Ike report on it in January or one of the other administrators, but we have the most robust interventions we've ever had right now. We have more students targeted for intervention and more resources targeted. We have Read 180, Math 180. We have so more. We've really built up through our multi-tiered systems of support, this really supportive structure for catching more kids who are proving to have been behind, and some of that came from NWA data. We don't do that, obviously, based on ethnicity or race. We do it based on score, but it'd be just such an interesting like data point, like, hey, just pull me those kids who are in MTSS getting support. Let's pull those kids by ethnicity and group. Be interesting to look at. But that what you said was like, hey, I'm glad you have 180. I'm glad you have all these great new interventions. Got some phenomenal new K3, Tier 2 and Tier 3 English language arts intervention pieces that we're very excited about. Really going to help our kids, and especially our English learners. But what you said was really smart. Like, maybe not just the academic pieces. What else is creating this gap? And that, to me, I think, is a piece of analysis that we could really do at a high level. So Shannon, I think putting that on our docket of like, how do we talk about that? So thank you, Mrs. Gibbons. That's insightful. Anyone else? All over talk. I always do.
Sorry, I couldn't raise my hand. I'm still challenged,
You got it.
22 months later. So I guess my one piece that I'm struggling a little bit with is that is the loss of socioeconomic. Only because to Michelle's point regarding the social emotional pieces, for instance, if we have a group of students that are in and out of homelessness, they may be facing different academic challenges and need different academic supports in order to help them improve over time. And so it's just, I don't know, John, if there's a way to capture it, but that's just something that is sort of in the back of my head is, something to consider moving forward.
Yeah. So to be clear, just because I want to clarify, we are aware of who our students are that qualify as foster or homeless. And because we are aware of them, we can, we can create supports for them. The weird thing about state reporting for students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, obviously, is that form goes directly to the state. The state qualifies them. That is wrapped into the data background at NUSD at the authorizer level. And then we don't have access. So we send our Casp scores up and they tell us how many of those kids who were qualified for free and reduced lunch, belong to our school. But it's really interesting. We never know. So that is a tricky one, Hope, for us. And we will certainly disaggregate that data as we actually do get Casp at some point. But yeah, it's a tricky one every year for administration, because you go, boy, if we had a list of who our students who are qualified for free and reduced lunch, maybe we could intentionally offer more supports directly to those students, but we just don't have that type of by name, by need access, which is, I get the states wanting to protect the privacy of the families. I understand that part. It just creates a barrier. So as we build these, continue to look at this data, let's find ways to really drill down on what we're looking at, what we're looking for.
Each year though, do we get an ethnic breakdown of that data each year or have access to it?
I'm sorry, what kind of breakdown?
The free and reduced lunch. Do we get like an ethnic breakdown or anything like that?
Good question. So do we get a free and reduced lunch breakdown by ethnicity? No. And as I say that, I'm sure I could be wrong, but it is not my recollection that we get like a 26% of your students who qualify for free and reduced lunch are X ethnicity. I don't believe we get that. There may be that like on ed data for like more of a county, city, county-wide level, and so we can maybe extrapolate. But yeah, we don't have that locally.
I was just wondering, because even though it wouldn't be directly in this chart, whatever impact it eventually come up with, we could at least mark each annual period if we at least knew to sort of track again how if they correlate or anything. I'm just thinking out loud. I apologize.
This is why I presented it, so we could have this dialogue. Thank you, everybody, for engaging. It's super important. It's in our charter, and we need to come back to it regularly. So thank you. Anyone else? We will bring it back. We will keep talking about this so that we can keep talking about it. Hope I'm gonna, I think, end my report and turn it back to you.
Okay, then. Before we take on the consent agenda, Dr. Ike, will you please see if we've received any public comments?
We have. We have one general public comment and one public comment for modifications to academic calendar. So you want me to hold that second one until we get to that portion?
Yes, please.
Okay, then the first one is general subject line, general board public comment. I'm so thankful. Oh my goodness, I really need to get my glasses back. I apologize. I'm so thankful that families will be able to volunteer on campus tomorrow for the Olympic triathlon. Appropriate safety protocols are in place, and having families back on campus for the outdoor portion of this school event is a huge celebration. Going back on campus is so exciting, and we are excited to see you, Carissa Richards Johnson, because I can't wait to see you on campus. It's going to be awesome. So thank you. I will forward this to you, Ms. Wells, for the minutes, and then I will save the second comment for that portion of the agenda.
Perfect. And that brings us to our consent agenda tonight. We have 6 items on that agenda. Sorry. Just quickly, I would like to mention that Dr. Ike and I do continue to monitor item A, which is conducting meetings remotely. Sitting outside, honestly, in December didn't feel so hot. And then trying to determine whether or not we would need or even could check the vaccination status of people attending. It just all became, honestly, just too much for right now with increasing numbers. And so I just want to put out there for people who are watching is that we are monitoring this closely. We do hope to come back together here soon. We're just trying to make the right decision in line with the other policies of the school so that there's no special treatment or no sort of ignorance of what our wanting volunteers are facing. Is that a good way of summarizing it, Dr. Ike?
Excellent.
Okay. I just want to put that out there before we discuss the rest of the consent agenda. Do any board members have questions on the 6 items? And if not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thanks, Jed. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
I think Shannon beat you, Josh. Next time. Amy, will you please actually, before Amy, you take the vote, John, can you do one more check for public comment on this item?
No public comment on this item.
Perfect. Thank you. Amy, will you please take the vote?
Yep. Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Viola?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And Jed?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. That brings us to our next action item tonight, which is the presentation of the first interim budget.
Good evening, everybody. John, are you going to click through or? It's a yes.
Can you see the slides, Steve?
Yeah. If you want to click through, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm clicking away, brother.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, cool. Well, hey, everyone, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time on the agenda tonight to talk about the first interim and the budget. This is one of the key fiduciary responsibilities of the board. So tonight we'll just walk through a presentation on where we are at as of first interim. So with that, we can kind of jump to the next slide. This next slide will probably look very familiar to you. It's a slide we go through 3 times a year. This first time really is at the first interim checkpoint. And the first interim is the period that covers from when the budget was adopted at the end of June, really July 1st, all the way through the end of October. This is really just a litmus test, if you will, because revenues can change during that period, expenditures can change during that period. So it's really just a time to see how the budget is doing. It has evolved over these past few months. This board meeting is also the time to approve the audit, which was just done on consent. And you'll probably have seen in the audit, or at least the audit brief, that there weren't any findings associated with our financials for last year. So that's a good place for the board to be and for the organization to be. That financial audit will get transferred to our authorizer, our SELPA, and a few other entities, including the Sacramento County Office of Ed. So it's always nice to have a clean audit. So we are kind of right where we're at this point of the year. So clicking ahead, we'll talk about what's in the first interim. And it's really all of the revenues the school has generated or is anticipated to generate over this first period of the year. So it's really revenues that come in from the state, revenues that may have come in from anticipated donations, base revenue is on there as well, and then new revenue components that maybe have come in since the budget was passed, and you'll see that in some line items in the budget. We anticipate, LCFF funding and things like that, but when the budget was adopted this year, new pockets of money started to sprout up, so those are accounted for in the first interim budget. We also use school services, as we have for the past several years, as our kind of main guidance for funding. So they provide estimates on the LCFF funding. Our partners over at Natumsy Unified provide funding estimates for taxes in lieu. We get local property taxes. Our SELPA provides information. So we get a couple different sources of information, but really the main driver for information for us is school services. So kind of getting to the heart of things, so this is where you can kind of see what the particular adjustments have been made in the budget. So with the LCFF, there's a component in there where schools and districts get a little bit extra money called supplemental concentration grants, depending upon student populations. And for us, our unduplicated rate is about 40%. It's remained consistent right around that level for the past few years, which is good news for us. One thing to take a look at, and you may have seen it in the budget, is that we had plans, our budget on the K-8 side to have a 96% average daily attendance, or ADA, and 95% at the high school. Those are really kind of traditional, at least on the K-8 side, what we had seen over the past prior several years, pre-COVID, of course. As we have continued to ask families to keep kids home, if they're having the slightest flu symptom, we've seen actual attendance rate come down a little bit. So at first interim, we were budgeting K-9 all the way through to be 94%. So something to think about is each percentage on average is worth about $100,000 to the school, to the organization. So as those 88 percentages come down, our revenue starts to come down a little bit. But it's something just to generally think about as we kind of close out the first interim period and make our way into second interim, which happens to include cold and flu season. So we'll see what happens as second interim progresses. A couple other things to note, again, in the budget is we have those pockets of money you've seen in there, the Educator Effectiveness Block Grants, some learning recovery funds, all total about $480,000 of one-time anticipated revenue coming into the budget during this first interim period. Some things that are not in the budget, although will likely be in the budget, hopefully, at second interim, are what John had mentioned, the Silicon Schools donation, and then the donation from the Reed Hastings Fund for our enrollment growth. And you may recall the Reed Hastings Fund has been providing Westlake Charter School $1,000 per student of growth for the past many, many years. And so as we grew into ninth grade, again, we are hopeful that we would anticipate that sometime in the next couple months as well. On the expenditure side of the house, largely in line, at least that first interim, where we had thought we'd be. Over the past few weeks, we have done some changes. We've brought aboard some subs full-time, so with full-time comes benefits. We've done some other kind of shifts in positions. So that would really be reflected in the second interim and at the year-end budget. But the budget itself remains fairly, very strong. Kind of thinking back and reflecting on the revenue side real quick, I don't think it was called out specifically, but the revenues at the state level have continued to really impress. So if you take a look at over the past couple of years, from a revenue standpoint, again, the money just continues to come into the state of California, which in turn revolves down to schools and LEA. So from a revenue standpoint, it continues to do very, very well. We are, of course, still spending quite a bit on sanitizers. You know, every student who walks through the gate gets a little squirt in the morning. And so you take that squirt over many, many times. And our vendor who sells us sanitizer is extremely happy, I'm sure. Also, a lot of requests for masks as well, but we are pleased to provide that to keep our students and our staff safe. But again, overall, the budget is very, very healthy and it continues to do well. So this is something that's always kind of interesting to take a look at. This is just a pie chart of the revenue distribution, really fancy word of saying, how the money comes in. So the money you can see comes in predominantly from the LCFF or EPA, the Education Protection Account. These are state funds. You'll see a smaller percentage that comes in for federal funds and for special education. And then you can kind of compare this against the outflow, really, where does it all go? And so if you can add it up, you'll see about 77% or so goes towards salary and benefits, which has remained pretty consistent over the past few years. And then a certain component goes towards books and supplies, and then also professional costs as well. And that professional services cost, jumping back real quick, may seem rather large, but we have a lot of services that we provide. So we have vendors that provide special education services. Our Clean It services crew is a professional service. Our landscaping is a professional services. So it seems maybe to be rather large, but we do have a number of folks who provide direct services, just not as direct employees. And then last but not least, this is kind of a snapshot of not only the adopted budget, but the first interim next to it, and then the projection 2 years out. You can really see the impact at first interim of those kind of one-time funds coming into the budget. Even though revenue or ADA was a little bit softer than anticipated, those one-times are helping out quite a bit. And again, this budget does not yet include any donations that may come in from Reed Hastings or Silicon School. So assuming those evolve into the budget as well, I think the second interim and year-end budget will continue to look really, really well. So with that, I would open it up to any questions at all. If not, I would seek your approval.
Are there any questions from the board? Seeing none, John, would you mind checking for public comment first?
Yes, ma'am. Just a moment. Let me check here. Seeing none.
Perfect. Is there a motion by the board to approve the first interim?
I will move the first interim budget.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lila. Amy, will you please take the vote?
Yes. Hope,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
Josh,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Lila,
Yes.
Shannon,
Yes.
and Jed.
Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Hope if we just might take a one moment to acknowledge the incredible work by our CBO. Steve Corbink has a good team around him for sure. Works close with Melissa Grunholtz, our ops director, Joe Ashman for sure in the business team, Diane as well. But Steve, you just absolutely crush it. If you look at the last 24 months of budgeting from when the pandemic first kind of hit, and we went into that weird June, and we didn't know what the fall was going to look like. Coming around this year and all these one-time pockets of money, we are so grateful for you and your work, Steve. You do an incredible job, and I just want to acknowledge that in front of the board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Thanks, John. So I know we have a public comment on this one. However, was there, John, did you want to present on it first?
I have a quick slide on it, if it's okay if I just hit this slide real quick.
Perfect.
Yeah, so for this action item, we want to just kind of talk about the modification to the calendar, kind of give some contextual, some context for it, and then open it up for any conversation before we call for a potential vote. I just went across the landscape of the interwebs and said, hey, type in Educator Burnout and see what comes up. And you got the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal. I mean, all the way across the landscape, including the Sacramento Bee, media outlets are talking about educator burnout for many different reasons in this particular season. I've done spent a lot of time talking to our teachers here at Westlake Charter School, and I think we have the greatest staff in America. But in talking to our staff, they admit that even here at the great Sunshine and Rainbows Westlake Charter School, it's exhausting. It's coming from every angle. It's political news cycles. It's having to reacclimate to the culture of having students back in class. It's loving these students and worrying about them as they leave. It's re-socializing people who've been at home for a year and have become a little untethered to the group responsibilities. It's a tough year for sure. But our staff's doing a great job. As you come up to winter break and we look ahead at February break and we look ahead at spring break, I want to acknowledge all those breaks are not like you see in other sectors of the economy. Teachers don't have paid vacation. When they're at work, they get paid. When they're not at work, they don't get paid. So when you look at winter break, it's like having 2 weeks of Saturdays. Those are unpaid days. But most of our teachers anyway admit to working during break. They work during these unpaid times. And why do they do that? A lot of them work over break because they say, hey, look, I got this list of things nagging at the back of my mind. I want to put together an amazing launch to the next session of learning in my classroom. And if I don't do a little bit of work, I just can't relax over break because I know there's no time coming back in on Monday morning like to launch. It's got to get done somewhere. Talked to Mrs. Chastain this morning. Funny. She's like, I always do it in the first week of break so I can relax. The second week of break, I talked to a different teacher this afternoon who's like, oh, I always do it at the last minute. But inevitably, these teachers are all admitting that they're working over break. Many of them say that the work is necessary. Now, look, this year is a very unusual year. I'm not asking for us to change our schedule forever, but in this year, I think more than ever before, we want our staff to go and rest on their break. We always want everybody to rest on their break, but this is an unusual year. The national education kind of environment is described as stressful and really influenced by post-traumatic stress. And what you see in that box down below there is from our comprehensive school safety plan, the Westlake Charter School plan, and it describes post-traumatic stress as having these types of indicators. And when you talk to our staff, things like anxiety, fear, grief, guilt, nervousness, overwhelmedness, these things come up. And in a lot of times it's coming up in relationship to what we've just been through for the last 24 months. Our staff work incredibly hard. I think they're in part struggling with some of what you see on the screen right there. And what our own documents, the CSSP and other outlets recommend is rest. Take time to unplug from work, to refresh and rest. So I would just say that supporting staff with these paid work days is supporting students with a rested and prepared staff. So what I'm asking is that the day after winter break on January 3rd, the day after February break on the 28th, and the day after spring break on April 19th, we make these non-student days so our staff can have work days. They'll come in the morning, they'll all be on campus, they will work all day, and if we give them this day, I'm going to ask them, please don't work over break. That thing that's nagging in the back of your mind, put that on the sidebar and bring it in on Monday morning, and we'll do that there. Unfortunately, to be totally transparent, this is something we've been working on for a couple of weeks as a proposal. However, I wish I could have communicated with parents a couple of weeks ago because I feel really guilty that if this approves tonight, that in very short notice, I'm going to be saying to families, hey, we're not going to be coming, we're going to have a non-student day on the 3rd. And so if we do approve this tonight, we'll be communicating with families in multiple channels. And we'll also be making sure that base is open for those families that need base for sure. I've certainly shopped this through our leadership team and around our teaching staff who feel heard and acknowledged and seen by these potential efforts. And so with that, I will take any questions, thoughts, or concerns. And there is one public comment, and I'll put that up whenever you want me to, Hope.
Great. I just wanted to share real fast that I found it interesting. Only after John ran this idea past me did I notice that my daughter's own high school is doing a very similar thing where they took an extra day at Thanksgiving. They're taking the 3rd off. They already had the 3rd off, so they're taking the 4th off as well as a staff day. And there's another one in the spring. And I think what's new for Westlake too to think about in terms of this timing is that high school does end going into winter break. And so there's grades and everything else. And so our high school teachers will have all that work pending too. At least I assume they do, John. Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But that's something that's new for us, right? Having a semester end right before that break. Are there other board comments on this before I take the public comment? Seeing none at this point anyway, John, will you please read in the public comment?
Yes, let me find it. There we go. A public comment for Roman numeral 8B, modifications to academic calendar. Kudos to our admin team and board for supporting our teachers with these extra non-student work days this year. Teachers and staff have worked so hard during very challenging times in education, and I am thankful that our Westlake team is acknowledging this and providing this support to our teachers so they can continue to do their best work with their students. Thank you, Carissa Richards Johnson.
Thank you, John. If there aren't any other board comments, is there a motion regarding this item?
I'll move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jed. Amy, will you please take the vote?
Yes. Hope?
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Josh?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Lila?
Yes.
Shannon?
Yes.
And Jed?
Yes.
Great, thank you. That leads us on to our last item for this evening, which is discussion of our 18-month goals, which I know you already have a tab going on.
I keep opening it on accident. I apologize. These are really just the goals that we had on the screen last month. To bring them again this month. I know we started a conversation last month. Hope if you want to lead us through this month, or if you want me to, we can do a whip around structure or open floor. Anything we want to talk about.
We could probably tag team them. Just as a reminder, these goals came out of the results from the short board assessment that John and I drafted and sent it out to everybody, including our committee members. And it's really just using the areas that it seemed like the board had targeted in their own comments. I'll just real quickly address the operational goals at the bottom. Those are really sort of the day-to-day operational items that were in the goals or in your responses. And so those they're not necessarily goals as much as things that we do know we need to address and work on. Probably sooner than 18 months for the first 3. Not that the planning for the permanent campus isn't completely ongoing. I just would not want to tie it necessarily to a super firm timeline. With that, we can go back and just start at the top, John, I think, and work down. I just wanted to address those real quickly because I'm not sure that we need to have a lot of discussion on them as much as acknowledge them. So we did go over these last month briefly. Michelle, I know we really wanted to get your feedback as well on these. So the first one was attempting to look at goal area 5. Westlake Charter School students will demonstrate social, emotional, and academic readiness as global citizens by embracing inclusion, diversity, equity, and cultural competency. Focus on creating a diverse, inclusive, and equitable environment by addressing disparities across all groups. And then the deliverables would be exploring data using the lens of inclusion, diversity, and equity, looking at the achievement gap, discipline, attendance, and other factors for many different groups. Disparities should be evaluated regularly, and strategies should be developed to help address areas of concern. It's pretty broad. I mean, we had a full presentation tonight, I think, that addresses at least a piece of sort of how this work would roll out and, you know, be undertaken over the next 18 months. But feedback would be fabulous.
Michelle.
I just wanted to express appreciation for this goal area and how it's outlined. I think I agree with you, Hope. Like, this was already demonstrated today, and it looks like there's a lot of iterations and more work that can be done, but it's great that this will be a focus.
Okay. The next one that popped out of the responses was goal area 1. We demonstrate what is possible. So Westlake Charter School will use creative methods to recruit, retain, and continuously develop the highest quality board members, committee members, faculty, and staff. Now, there was, just to recap sort of what we discussed last month, is I know there was board member concern about how do we outreach high quality, diverse, and inclusive potential board and committee members to demonstrate what is possible. I'm not sure that John and I have necessarily tackled a plan yet on how to give the board the tools for doing that work, but would love your thoughts on what would be helpful, whether it's wording this goal differently, or training or educate, whatever it might be, because we do have a need for the long-term success of the school and this board to begin really filling the tank and fleshing out our committees. But Josh in particular, right, has called out the need for a grant writer. And in terms of doing the development work that's needed, more hands would make for lighter work for everybody on that committee. So thoughts appreciated on this one. Sean?
So I think kind of along those lines, it would be helpful to know what the skills are, or the, you know, where the specific, you know, like we need a grant writer, we need an XYZ kind of person, so that we're not just looking for diversity's sake. We're looking for skills and diversity and quality and all of the things that we're looking for, but just looking for people based on non-skill criteria is obviously not helpful so much.
Right, and that was something that really did come out of the last meeting, Sean. So thank you again for mentioning that. So in my vision, I think the first step under this goal area, if we were to pass it as a board or take it on, would be to ask each of the committees to look at the work they're doing, looking at their own sort of 12 to 18 month plan, and identify areas of need in terms of skill sets to do the work of that committee. If that makes sense. I'm not sure I explained that very well. It was okay. You're right. So if we can build the tank there and then share that list of skills with the entire board, it might, kick off a light bulb about someone you know in the community who has that skill that would be a strong addition to either the committee or the board. John, you look like you have something to say.
Gosh, you're like a mind reader. Like I was like, should I raise my hand?
I know your faces. We've worked together long enough now. I can tell when there's a noodle.
So, a couple thoughts I have about this topic is: are we missing the opportunity to say in that line that we are using creative methods to recruit, retain, and continuously develop the highest quality board members, committee members, faculty, and staff, with the intention that they reflect the broader diversity of our community in the goal statement, not just diversity and inclusivity in the deliverables. And why? Sean acknowledged, well, but we don't want to just look out for diversity's sake. However, putting more people on this board who have students of color that have gone through the public education system is a skill that we have to acknowledge. Like, maybe it's not a skill, but it is a perspective that is missing. So I don't know how many of us have a student who has gone through public school who's an English learner. And that is a perspective that is interesting for me to put on this board, even if they didn't have the skills that we could teach them to be part of the finance committee, like purposely saying we want to recruit and retain the highest quality staff members, board members who also bring the perspective of the diversity of our community. And that can be ethnic, racial, linguistic, financial, all of those. So I wonder if that belongs in the goal statement. Sean?
I would agree with that. I think that it's important to have something to bring to the people that we're outreaching that isn't just, I'm outreaching you because you would increase the diversity of our board, because that's yucky. But being able to say to somebody, we are looking for somebody who has this perspective or this skill or whatever, it is fantastic. So yes. I think avoid yucky.
Yeah, although I'm just going to, because I feel like I'm going to push back a little bit. It may feel yucky as you, so I would never put you in that position. But I think in 2021, approaching a community member who is a student of color at our school and saying, hey, our board needs to reflect the diversity of our community, and I'm wondering if you're interested in helping our board diversify. I think that is not as yucky if we're really being transparent about what we're trying to do. I wouldn't put you in that position, but I would say, like, I can think of community members who would say, hey, put me on that board because you know what? I reflect a part of this community that's not currently on your board. So, you know, I'm just saying that out loud. But I agree that when we say high quality, that implies skills. What skills are we looking for? Of course, that is important. But I just wonder if the goal area also should include, because it doesn't right now say that we're looking to reflect the diversity of our community. And if we don't say it, we're going to miss the opportunity to say it.
I think we should. And I think that's a really good point. I agree with you, John. And this is not obviously about racial diversity because I am white, but I would say even when Mrs. Chavez approached me about being on the board, one of the selling, like, I was like, I don't know anything about education. I'm not a parent. I'm not a teacher. Like what? But like part of the thing was like, we honestly just want someone who's none of those things. Can you just come fill this specific role? And I was like, oh, cool. If I can just do the things I know how to do and be a different perspective and not have to be an expert, great. And so I think maybe it feels more like sensitive about racial issues versus just like I'm a non-typical community member. But I would encourage us to also try and approach that and to people who might also be interested in filling all sorts of gaps that we have, whether there's skill gaps, diversity gaps, experience gaps, things like that. And I think putting that explicitly in this goal will help orient towards that from my perspective.
I also like it because it includes faculty and staff, and we know what skills we're looking for there, right? I mean, we've got job descriptions,
and we have a white paper, right? That was something we had talked about last time, right? Like for that one, including them here, right? We had that discussion about whether or not that was actually duplicative because of the work we had done last year, and I feel like putting it all under this goal builds it, right? It shows sort of the pyramid of growth and process, where I hope someday we are able to, draft a white paper that shows how we outreach, potential committee and board members. We're just haven't developed the process far enough yet. Any other comments on this goal area? Oh, yes. Was there someone?
Sorry, it's Michelle.
Hi, Michelle. Go.
2 quick thoughts. It doesn't need to be in the document, but when there was the question about like, how would this look? I think maybe because I just came up through this way, but like getting involved in the committee and being invited to the committee meetings first as a starting point versus like trying to sell somebody directly onto the board, I think is really helpful. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is I know we talk about faculty and staff, and then the board outreach seems very focused on board members. And I just thought maybe we should add a line around what that recruitment, or retention for staff might look like too, in terms of the deliverable.
Oh, in the deliverables.
Yes.
Yeah, so part of that is because the first part is me restating what the goal area is right out of the strategic plan. And the deliverables or sort of how to achieve it. But I do understand your point there. So maybe we could reference use of the white paper or something like that, John. We can talk about that because this one I think we're going to be modifying anyway to bring back to the board. Does that work?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. But you're right. Restating the goal area doesn't necessarily help with the deliverables because the goal area is actually much broader than the focus that came out of the actual survey results. I was just trying to tie it back to the strategic plan. Anything else about this goal area 1 piece? So that one we know for sure will be likely modified, most likely, and brought back to the board maybe next month. And then 2, I still know is not, I just acknowledge from the get-go, I know it's not quite right. The goal behind it is something actually related to what Amber Husted talked about during her comments earlier, in the sense that through the responses, it was clear that as a result of COVID and being separated from each other, there is this loss of community and what I often will call the trust jar, in knowing that everyone in our community is trying to do the best by each other, and how we sort of demonstrate that to each other to rebuild our relationships as we start to come back together. And so that's where the deliverable came from, and create opportunities for greater understanding and collaboration throughout our community to build trust, acceptance, and shared goals after the separation caused by COVID. At least for me, I'll say this one comes from a place where I felt like we had communicated or were able to more clearly state our map, basically, of where we're headed. And I wonder if there's a piece of work for the board about resharing the vision and the direction of the school, so that everybody is, again, sort of, we don't have to all agree, but that there is a common understanding of what the steps forward look like. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of my summary, but I'd love thoughts on how to maybe better say that, or if that's, I mean, it's a really soft goal, I know. Other goals you'd like to see instead, I'm certainly open to all criticism. And like I said last time, if anybody has, an epiphany or changes that they'd really like to see, or thoughts that come to them, to please go ahead and email John and I, just because we'd love to try to incorporate more clearly what everybody's thinking.
Yeah, how do we get out this building, reuniting this community? How do we get at that? Is it a board task?
During our discussion last month, I remember pushing back on this and being like, I don't quite understand what the board's role is in this deliverable. And it's interesting tonight reading it, I'm like, maybe this is a board role. I don't know. I just think it's interesting that I just remember this conversation last month and really being like, what does this actually look like for a board versus wave? And reading it tonight, I'm like, yes, maybe we do need to be doing this work. This is the work of the board. This is the work of everybody right now.
This board sets the vision. If the vision is reunification of the community, maybe that's board work.
And it may be that it means supporting wave, right? Or joining in or assisting with some function that they, if that makes sense, like it can look like anything this board wants it to look like. In the current climate, in the news cycle, I feel like there's a piece of this board being leaders of bringing the community back together and rebuilding where we were 2 years ago, right? Like my Facebook memories have been all about the cocoa train this week. And it devastates me every morning when I wake up to that picture, because I mean, it's like my favorite second to chili cook-off. But we haven't had those moments as a community where we could come together, right? It's just hard for me. And so I don't know how the board leads it, but I think we are stronger when we're working together to the common goal. And I worry that COVID has really interfered with that. But we're also not going to solve it tonight. I do know that too, which is why if something comes to you or there is a distinct action you can think of or something we can do to lead, I'd love to hear it.
So the big I mean, the big overview of the 18 months looks like goal area 5, looking at the data, systematically approaching achievement gap and other pieces. Goal area 1, recruit and retain, all of the above and all of the ways. And goal area 2, which is like this, how do we get the community, that school and community collaborate again? Yeah, okay. If anybody has thoughts on those 3 areas, does anybody think one of those areas isn't the right area? Okay, that's a good start. We're in the right areas. We just got to go wordsmith.
Yeah.
And maybe take a stab at like measurables, outcomes, so we can call them goals. Okay.
Yep.
We will do so.
Okay. Before we leave this item, John, will you please just make sure that we don't have any public comment?
Looking now and seeing none.
Great, thank you. So we know that one future agenda item coming up will be this comprehensive school safety plan. Again, like John said, that if any board members are interested in reviewing that plan, let them know, or let Monica know maybe. John, would that be better? And we can make sure that you have the opportunity to go in and review those changes. Are there any other future agenda items you can think of for next month? No. I'm sure there will be plenty. I know we'll get a lottery update, potentially a presentation regarding the different interventions that we've undertaken this year, if there's bandwidth to do so. Would it be possible to get a high school presentation, John, and potentially just say how the first semester went?
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Okay. But if you think of anything else that you'd like to see on the agenda, please reach out, let us know, and we can do our best to address your interest. With that, I'll start with reflection, and I'll just go with the order on my screen, which means Michelle and then Shannon.
I loved all the dialogue tonight, but in particular, the academic achievement gap discussion and presentation was really my favorite highlight. And thank you, John. I know I made the request and then had a couple times where I couldn't be here, but I appreciate you bringing it back.
Yes, ma'am.
Shannon and then Lila.
Yeah, I agree. I like when we have conversations here that then influence the things we're going to do and impact. So it helps me to like think about how we're going to pull these things together. So thanks for doing some prep work, everyone, for us for the next impact meeting.
Lila and then Josh.
If it's a reflection, it's also a celebration of the staff that supports the board, Steve, Amy, John, just, reviewing things like the budget and just how much the work that you all put into it to review those things. And I just really, really appreciate it. Thank you.
Josh and then Jed.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank the staff, the teachers, the support staff, everybody. It's been an interesting year. It's been a strain, and whatever we can do to try to make it better, because they just keep going above and beyond. So I just want to do a reflective celebration.
Thanks, Josh. Jed and then Sean.
I too appreciated the discussion on the achievement gap and find it reassuring that we've got an NWEA anchor that we can coalesce around. So glad to see that. Thank you.
Sean?
I appreciated the appreciation for Steve, without whom finance would flounder. But I will echo that appreciation.
Steve or Amy, would you like to reflect?
I think I'll just reflect briefly on the recent conversation and bringing our community together. I think we see benefits of bringing students together and families together. So the more work we can do and kind of relearning what that looks like, the sooner we can get back to some normalcy.
Thanks, Steve. Amy?
I will ditto Steve and add to it that I miss Carissa Johnson and her face at our meetings. And every time we hear from her in some way, shape, or form, it makes me happy. And I remember that we have an amazing parent community ready to jump in and do the heavy work that we're doing this year right alongside us. So I hope you're still listening, Chris. I miss you.
Thanks, Amy. I just appreciate all of you as we close out 2021. I don't know that it's looked like anything we had anticipated. And just to, stay safe and have a good holiday season. And John and I will take your comments tonight on the goals, and we'll work together to wordsmith and bring them back. But we are better together with everybody's feedback. And so, John, you want to go last?
Lila, do you have your hand up?
I do. I'm so sorry. I would be amiss if I did not thank you all for having teachers' backs as the teacher on the board with the modification to the calendar. Thank you for trusting us. Thank you for knowing what we are doing and for allowing us that time. So I just really, really thank the board for having teachers' backs during this time.
Solid. Yeah.
Thank you, Lila. John?
Similar reflection. Want to reflect on how supportive this board is of all the staff members in this organization, classified, certificated, everyone included. I also really enjoyed getting back to an academic conversation tonight. Thank you, Michelle, for pushing me to say, hey, let's bring it. Let's start. Like, we've talked about the pandemic so long. Let's start talking about achievement. So thank you for bringing it back. It felt like school for a moment there, and I really enjoyed that. I felt like there was one more, but I'll end it there. I thought I had one more piece, but I'll end it on, getting to talk about achievement again. Felt like school again.
Normalcy is nice. I mean, even if it's only brief respites, it's still, it's nice to get a feeling of the work, right? And what we're here to do. With that, I will go ahead. Oh, well, let's do one more chance. Just one more look for public comment, just in case. Done?
Yep.
Okay.
Looking for public comment and seeing none.
Perfect. I will go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 8:09. I'll see you sooner, some of you in committee meetings, but if not, I'll see you after the new year. Happy 2022. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, ending the